Welcome to Ask the Experts Fishing Seminar. We've gathered together 6 leading fishing experts that will answer your questions on any fishing topic. This is a unique chance for you to ask about your favorite fishing spots, fishing techniques, boat questions, tournament tips, tackle suggestions, or anything fishing related. If you've got fishing questions, we've got the answers. Our moderator for today's panel is Bob Murray. Bob is the host of the long-running television show Delaware Valley Outdoors. Bob is an outdoor writer, noted angling lecturer, tournament angler, and tackle designer. Our first panelist is Steve Horvath. Steve is a member of the Delaware Valley Outdoors staff, noted author and outdoor writer, tournament angler. Steve is both a fresh and saltwater expert and fishing guide. Our next panelist is John Hawthorne. John is a member of Delaware Valley Outdoors staff, local freshwater fishing expert, outdoor writer. John is an expert on fishing the Delaware River and Lake Nakamixon. Our next panelist is Lou Consoli. Lou is a professional bass angler, media personality, lure designer and manufacturer. Lou is an expert in finesse fishing and top water angling. Our next panelist is Captain Dieter Scheel. Captain Dieter has been fishing local waters for over 40 years, professional fishing guide, expert on the Delaware River for shad, smallmouth, and striped bass, expert jet boat operator. Our next panelist is Blaine Mengel. Blaine is the host of Backwoods Angler TV, outdoor writer, professional fishing guide, expert on the Delaware River, and specializing in cold water fishing. Our final panelist is Chris Gorsuch. Chris is a professional fishing guide, expert on the Susquehanna and Juniata rivers. Chris is an outdoor writer and photographer, jet boat expert, and kayak angling expert. And now, here's your chance to ask the experts.
Let's hear it for them, please. I had to twist a lot of arms to get these guys up here, but you have a great opportunity to ask the questions, okay? You've got experts from all over rivers, shore. We could probably even ask a duck question once in a while here too. All right, I'm going to just start off. Blaine, I'm going to ask you the first question, okay? This is just my little questions. And what we've done, we've gotten a bunch of questions from over the internet to our website, and this one is from a fellow in Doylestown, and he says, I see you use hair jigs on the show. Obviously, he watches your show. How do you work it, and what's the best color? You got to tell these people.
Best colored hair jigs? That was the question? The best color hair jig?
Yeah, best color hair jig.
Whatever the fish are eating that day, that's the best color. No, I like dark colors, olive green, black, brown. If the water's dirtier, I prefer darker. If the water's clearer, I'll go more to browns and greens. But overall, I'll almost always start out with a black hair jig. It's always been the best producer for me. And I like rabbit hair, just to add that little tidbit of info, a little secret of mine. I like rabbit hair or fox because gives the hair jig a little bit more life on the bottom of the river when the fish aren't very life prone. They're pretty dead down there and they're just staring at the lures.
You showed that technique to me with the hair jig, and it's very popular. Then, do anybody have any other questions on that thing? How about weight-wise?
Weight, well, again, I want a hair jig to fall slowly, but if the wind's blowing, if the water's high, I got to go with a heavier head, so a quarter. I don't go anything heavier than a quarter most of the time, usually because it's very hard to find somebody that ties a 3/8 ounce hair jig. So, but 8ths and quarters are primary. Those are usually my weights.
Lou, where's your favorite fish spot?
Here in the country.
Anywhere.
Man, I got a few of them. I love Kerr Lake, which is called Bugs Island. It's on the border of South Hill, Virginia, and North Carolina. That's an awesome place because you can, anywhere in the country, like out west, you got some clear water. Down south is noted for a lot of grass and laydowns like logs and stuff. Up north here, like a Champlain type of deal, you know, you have a lot of clear water, you have a lot of rock. At Kerr Reservoir, no matter where you fish in the country or what your particular talent might be or what you like to fish, it's there. If you like to fish humps in 30 foot of water to come up to 10 and fish in humps with big crankbaits or jigs or Carolina rigging, you can do that. There's an area there called the log jams. They used to bring logs down there. I mean, it's stacked up. You like to flip wood with a jig and you like to throw that, it's awesome. If you like to top water on grass, they have that. So any type of condition for fishing is at that lake. However, to fish Toho down in Florida, it's a shallow lake in the Orlando area. Your deepest part's probably 12, 15 foot of water max, 12, 13 foot on average. But it's a 6 to 8 foot lake, tons of grass. If you like to throw 30 to 50 pound braided line on a 1 ounce weight, pitching a beaver or some type of creature bait, you'll stick 5-pounders all day, you'll stick 8s, you'll stick 15 pound, 12 pound. I mean, they're scattered throughout, but you know, you can pull 10-pounders out of there. And you know, Gunnersville in Alabama is awesome. The Delta out in California is good. Probably one of the best lakes within somewhat of a driving distance is like Lake Anna in Virginia. That's great for bass. Or if you can run up to Champlain, 6.5 hours from here. What's great about Champlain, man, is if you love to fish smallmouth, you're going to fish in the Plattsburgh area, which is the main body of water there, or north, or in what I would call the ocean. When you look on a map, it's just a huge lake. If you want to really catch some decent largemouth, then you go to the southern end, typically, which is in Ticonderoga. And it kind of looks like the river part of that lake. But a lot of grass, a lot of wood, and stuff for the largemouth. If you want to fish up north for the smallies, you can fish 50, 30, 40 foot of water, drop shot, and pull some beautiful smallmouth, 3, 4, 5-pounders. So that's great. The other thing is if you like to fish rivers, we probably have for some of the best largemouth fishing is probably the Potomac. That's something that has a lot of grass, has logs, you know, different types of structure, so you can really broaden your horizons as far as the different techniques to use and hone your skills. But these guys down here are great, like on the Susquehanna and Delaware River. Delaware River is a great fishery. Susquehanna is an awesome fishery. So you got experts here that can tell you how to fish something that's, you know, an hour and a half from our place max and do awesome. But those are the main lakes and bodies of water around the country that for tournament quality fish, man, they just kick butt. There's nothing like it.
Well, speaking of the Delaware River, Captain Dieter, I'm going to throw you this one. And I have to go with this one because I've asked Dieter to take me out fishing, and he has kindly said he's booked up for the whole season, so I can't go fishing with him. But let's just talk a little bit about the Delaware River and your expertise with the shad and the stripers. And also, would you partake that information about what's going to happen next year? I don't think people know about that with the herring.
As of January 1st, 2012, there's going to be a moratorium on herring. That means you can't catch them, you can't target them, and consequently, it's really going to put a dent in people's striper fishing. April and May are great. Second half of April and into May are great striper fishing on live herring. Anywhere from Lambertville all the way down to the Commodore Barry Bridge. If you have herring, live herring or chunk herring, you're going to have a real good shot at catching some nice big striped bass up to state record size, 50-pound plus. We average probably 20-pounders in the river in April and May, but that's going to come to a screeching halt as of next year. Try throwing a bucktail or a bait, you know, a crankbait or something like that out to stripers that have herring hanging all around them, and you can see the difficulty we may have next year catching striped bass during the spawning season.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Now, I have the question here, and I'm just going to hit you with it. What's the shad situation? I know you, and I know you're an expert at it, and you catch the living daylights out of them, but all my buddies that I know say, where's the shad? Where'd they go? They're now. Tell us.
It's kind of funny because I hear people complaining all the time about the shad situation, and I've been fishing them in the Delaware for 25 years. And, 2 years ago I had my best year ever, and last year I had my best year ever, and last weekend I was out catching shad, and they were big shad. I haven't seen a fall off in quality of fish or in numbers of fish. I think we averaged probably over 20 fish per trip, and that's for a 4-hour trip last year. I didn't get skunked at all last year. Hope I don't this year. No, but yeah, people say that shad fishing is on the decline, and it's terrible. And I had a guy come up to me today and he said, yeah, I used to fish shad back in the day, and back when you could catch them. And I don't know. I had a couple hundred fish days last year, and I haven't had any hard time. We're fishing them differently than we did back in the day. You're not using shad darts. You're using flutter spoons. You're using some different depth adjusting mechanisms to get your bait down there. I know the guys on the downriggers used to do real well. I used to really wish that I could fish with downriggers as well as some of the guys did. I can tell you that I fished downriggers for a couple years and stopped using them because they're not as effective as the methods that I use. So, hey, shad fishing on the Delaware has been fantastic for me. And up to me after my seminar this year, and they said, we used to catch 6-8 fish a trip, and for years and years, that's what we used to catch. And we tried your methods, and last year we averaged 40 fish per day. And so the fish are there. If you're using the right methods, you're going to catch them. And if you want to know a little bit about those methods, stop by my booth. I'll tell you how we catch them.
How many people shad fish here anymore? Oh, yeah. You grew up with the shad. I know that. Anybody else have questions about shad fishing or anything? Anybody? No. I also have a couple of things that to entice you to ask me questions. I have giveaways. So if you want some presents, raise your hand and ask. It could be a stupid question. Not don't worry about it. All right.
I think Lou gave us a lot of good information, but what he didn't tell us is what is his favorite location in this area, like within 10, 15 miles.
You know that answer, man. I love Nakamixon. I like Nakamixon, and people call it the Dead Sea and everything else, and it is tough. I've never been on Nakamixon when you can catch, I don't know, 10, 20. I've never had a story where I could tell somebody I kicked a ton of, I kicked butt on Nakamixon and caught numbers. I never catch numbers on Nakamixon. However, I never catch them under 2 pounds. I mean, I never caught one in my life that was 12 inches. I guess unless you're on the shore and you have a bobber and they eat a worm or something. But if you're out in a boat and, you pick up Bob's video, and it's a shame that he gives out a lot of secrets, but he does. And for whatever it is, $50 or $200 for your DVD or something like that, and a free Chuck E. Cheese coupon. You get a lot of good secrets. But for the price that he charged for his DVD, $39, $29, whatever it is, he's got a lot of good information. We've gone out on the water and shared some of that, and maybe some of these guys up here have. But it is a great lake, and you can catch 3s and 4s there pretty consistently. It's not difficult to do that if you kind of know where to go, but I think you have to be in a boat. My Skippy Fish works great on that body of water because there's a lot of grass there. Your grass will grow off that shore and it'll kind of die off in that 8 or 9 foot depth situation, and then it'll kind of be a little bit shallow, but sometimes it mats up there. You throw any type of top water like a Skippy Fish, a frog, you're not going to get away with anything with trebles because it's going to get caught up in that grass. Or if you wacky worm a Cinco and throw that in there, those techniques work very well. Guys seem to do that and say they still don't catch fish, but there is techniques to using them. It's not just as simple as sometimes throwing it out. But one thing that I find a lot, and I talk about in seminars, and I'll talk about it at my 4 o'clock one, is too many people have a habit of doing the same thing. And basically what I mean by that is sight fishing, but not fishing like a fish on the beds. What typically guys do is, let's say we go to Nakamixon, and it's a great lake, okay? You guys go put your boat in wherever you launch. And typically what guys do is they get in their boat, me and Mike Stewart are out fishing, and we hang out 10 yards, 50 yards off the bank, whatever it may be. And we cruise the bank, no matter where you go, wherever we put a boat in, Beltsville, Blue Marsh, wherever you guys fish. Guys, for some reason, just fish the bank, and you'll throw crankbaits, spinnerbaits, whatever you're throwing, jigs, and you'll throw it, and you'll say, man, I remember that log is right around the corner. I remember there's a big laydown, or there's a huge rock pile over here. The problem with most guys when they go out fishing, and you catch fish, but you're not catching huge fish, is that you just go along the bank, you go around that cove, come out, you work the edge of that grass, go in, and you'll work the whole contour of the shoreline. But you don't see anybody fishing out in the middle somewhere. And if you do, that means they're on something. They found a rock pile, they found that submerged bridge, they found that submerged pond. You know, there's ponds in Nakamix, and it's all flooded. So you might have a pond that was 15 foot deep. Well, maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 foot of silt now over those years. But so say that pond is 10 feet. You know, that body of water where you're fishing might be 30 foot deep, 20 foot deep. But it's actually, next to that, you'll see where it drops to 25 or 30 foot. Well, that was a pond that was there at one point or could be in that area. So you have to learn the right techniques to fish, but stop fishing against the bank all the time. You have to go out and find fish, and it stinks. It's terrible because you know where that fish is at that log. You catch them there all the time. You know your spots, right? And you look like a superhero when you bring somebody on the boat with you that doesn't know that spot, right? You pulled it out, man, and right, it's great. But if you want to catch quality fish, like what he just told you, right? Forget the shad darts anymore. There's a different way. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know that if he didn't tell me or show me on that water. But you got to start doing some stuff, not necessarily offshore, but just do things different. Don't go on the same body of water and do the things that you've been doing. Go out there and spend a whole day just on your electronics looking for stuff that's submerged rock piles, drop-off ledges. Work ledges, man. Go to Kentucky Lake. You'll fish and win tournaments there working ledges, but there's a million ledges. Ledges are like a creek channel or a drop. And in a summertime pattern, a lot of fish like to stage there. But it's the same way at Nakamixon. But you gotta get guys come to my booth and go, man, I don't ever get them at Nakamixon. Well, go look at my truck outside. I got an 8.9 there 2 years ago, and one day on May 19th, I caught an 8.9, I got a 5, a 6, and I caught almost a dozen 3s and 4s. It was the best day of my life ever on that lake. It's never happened again. But when we go out there, we stick 3 and 4 pound fish on Nakamixon. Turn your cell phone up, man. One more time like that, and you're out of here. Give me that phone. I'll talk to them. I'll tell them what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So just do that. Do things a little bit different, okay? Don't just do the same thing. But go spend a day. It's fun looking at your electronics and seeing a stack of fish there and in 35 foot of water, drop shot and a little 4-inch worm. It's night and day. It's harder because you're not going to know exactly what to do. It's a new thing for you. But just play around this year with some different things opposed to doing the same things, and you'll see how it works. It's a big deal.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and I'm going to ask Mr. Horvath for some saltwater information about one of my favorite fish. Is it a fluke or a flounder, Steve? Could you help me with that one?
What kind of question is that?
I
mean, is that some kind of trick question? Is that loaded or
I
what?
get it. I get that question all the time. Do you either go fluke fishing or you go on flounder fishing? Do you know the difference between a fluke and a flounder?
No.
There you go.
Okay. A fluke is when you catch something.
And he's right.
And a flounder is when somebody falls out of the boat and they drown. They flounder around.
Flounder around.
No, you know, there seems to be like a Mason-Dixon line drawn right down the center of New Jersey. And it seems like south of Barnegat Inlet, people call it a flounder. It's a summer flounder. From there up to Long Island, it's a fluke. It's the same fish. But for some reason, they call it by 2 different names.
Yeah, I always get that question. I get, oh, yeah, we were catching fluke. Well, that's...
Yeah, I had a flounder sandwich. Well, what kind of fish was it? It was flat.
How many people did know the difference between a fluke and a flounder? No, we don't have any fluke and flounder people here. Johnny boy, we're going to put you on a spot. Oh, I'm going to put you on a spot like next seminar too. But let's just talk. I mean, Lou mentioned Lake Nakamixon, and you and I had the opportunity to do the DVD on Nakamixon, and you helped an awful lot with it. Just briefly hit some of the spots that Lou was talking about, but what you know about Nakamixon, how to fish it.
Well, that's a huge question,
Yeah,
Bob.
And I'm sure you got plenty of time to answer.
3 days later, I'll be finished.
Yeah.
Knock-and-mixing, the great thing about knock-and-mixing is you probably can do just about any style of fishing that you like. If you like fishing shallow flats, you can go and pitch at weeds and pitch at wood cover all day long. If you like fishing, deeper ledges and drop-offs, you could probably spend a whole day fishing down by where the bluffs are. And depending on the season, I mean, I've caught fish on those bluffs just about every month that there wasn't ice on the water. There are fish that live their entire lives down there. There's fish that live their entire lives up underneath the 563 bridge that spend their entire life up there, that never make it back out. They'll stay in that bay. So if you want to stay in that bay and just fish that bay for years and years and years, the first boat I ever had was a little 12-foot. All I had was a little trolling motor. And all I could do was put in, troll up under that bridge, fish that shoreline, and fish all the areas back there. And I did just fine. And there was plenty of fish up there just about every season. If you like to fish shallow weeds, well, you can start staying in some of the creeks, some of the areas where it's shallower water. But if you really want to, I guess, increase your chances of catching some bigger fish, like up underneath that bridge, I don't think I've caught a fish bigger than four pounds. Mm-hmm. Most all of my fish that were over 5 were caught much more towards the main lake where the water is much, much deeper, or at least there was access to deeper water very close by. Lou said he's got one over 8. I've got, a couple of 6s and loads of 5s, but most all of them were very, very near deep water. And it was not just chucking a spinnerbait at the shore. It was fishing soft plastics along steep breaks where there was usually some form of wood cover, a tree, a log, something has fallen into the water that's 16, 18, 20 foot deep, and we're fishing it with some sort of a weighted plastic and fishing it extremely, extremely slow. In the summertime, probably one of the best days you and I had. We were nowhere near shore. Like Lou said, we were away from shore. We were on top of a spot that I had found with my electronics years before, and we were out there throwing Carolina rigs and Texas rigs, and we caught a couple of 3 and 4s, and I think you caught a 5-pounder that day. But that's a spot that no one fishes because no one goes looking for it. It's on the map. No one goes looking for it. I'm the only person I've ever seen fish there. There are numerous points. Turn off that cell phone, please, or you'll be thrown out.
Hold on for a minute.
I will have Lou remove you.
Yeah. Everything's okay here. I'm up on the stage giving a seminar right now. You want to talk to the people? Hold on. Say something.
Ask the experts, right?
Say something, son. You're on TV. Okay.
Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks,
I appreciate it.
John.
Yeah. Okay. It's good, Steve. Finding deep water structure. Finding points where there's a big drop-off. Trying to find some of the spots where they have planted the porcupine cribs or rock piles. The DVD includes a map of all the spots where they have planted structure. I only know where a few of them are, but I was very anxious to get that DVD myself so that I can go out this year and start looking for it some more. But if you could find one of those spots, 16, 18 foot of water, and fish that in the summer with a Carolina rig, I mean, that's as close to a guarantee as there is at catching some good fish. So what do I like to do, Bob? Mostly in the summertime, I like to fish deep water, like to fish away from the shore, like to find some form of structure that no one else has found because, quite honestly, the fish are a lot easier to catch. So I'm not sure if...
Okay, how many people?
You know what a Carolina rig is? Most guys know. Who doesn't know? Anybody?
It's good. Thanks, Lou. Carolina rig is a soft plastic lure, a lizard, a worm that's hooked weedless. But then about 2 or 3 foot up from the actual hook, there'll be a swivel and then usually about a 1/2 ounce to a 1 ounce weight attached. And what that allows you to do is that allows you to not only just cast a long way, it sinks to the bottom very quickly. And then you can just slowly move that and pull that along the bottom. You can cover a lot of deep water very quickly. Feeling what that weight is doing along the bottom allows you to know, okay, am I in weeds? Did I just hit a pile of rocks? Am I in just muck and dirt? And it allows you to, even if you don't have a depth finder, it can tell you a lot about how deep the water is, because as soon as I cast it out, I start watching my line, and you can see the line go, and you can even like count it down to figure out how deep the water is. I mean, I have a depth finder, and I think to fish the lake successfully, you should have a depth finder. But just to have some idea of how deep the water you're fishing, that can be useful for you. But once that gets on the bottom, just slowly, slowly drag it, and then that really is a very good way for fishing the lake in the summer.
Carolina rig is a very effective bait, and a lot of guys, I know, well, you guys know how to do it. But if you're on lock and mixing, especially, that's an excellent bait for that lake, because most guys are not fishing that deep. And like Lou said, and you said, that's where the bigger fish are going.
Especially in the summertime, 16 to 18 feet seems to be kind of a magic number as far as the depth that I generally like to catch some fish. I mean, I like fishing shallow too. I'll fish topwater in the summers and do stuff like that. But I mean, if I have to go and get a quality fish, I'm usually looking for some form of offshore structure, something to fish a Carolina rig.
That Carolina rig too, when he has the weight on there above the swivel, you can go to like Michael's or a craft store and get a couple glass beads, glass beads for jewelry. You'll tie that, have the glass beads above your swivel so that bullet weight that you're using, the lead weight that you're using, will not damage that knot. And as you're dragging on the bottom, if you just jerk it a little bit and twitch the rod tip, sometimes those beads click and clack, kind of sounds like a crayfish clacking. And when you drag that through, that weight's going through the grass, the rock, the silt. It's creating little puffs of dirt and, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, 3 foot later, you got this little lizard floating above, or because it's a little bit more buoyant, it's not heavy, and where that worm's dragging 2, 3, 4 foot behind it. So with a little puff of dirt, those fish look and wonder what it is, and all of a sudden, your bait's just 3 foot behind it. Bang, they hit it, you set the hook, and you're good.
All right, now, I have a DVD that I can't sell. No.
What's it rated?
Next
X
person give me a question. You get, all right.
How you doing, Bob? Good to see you.
I know. See, I know all these
We're
people.
all buddies from way back. I fish knock and mixing a lot, thanks.
Right.
And I usually do pretty good on top water.
Give him the mic.
I usually do pretty good on top water, and we catch a few bass on the soft plastics. But I've been told that a good way to fish is deep in the grass or in the pads with jigs. Heavy jigs. Now, I've never done that. Can anybody help us out here?
Sure. I am not I love plastic worms. I'm more of a worm fisherman than I am a jig fisherman. But what has really kind of got me more over the last couple of years, and Bob has finally converted me, is to fishing, if you're familiar with Senkos. Senkos is a brand name. There's tons of different manufacturers that make them. But what I've really begun to do is as I'm fishing like a deep edge of weeds, is I'll take one of those Senkos and just wacky rig it and pitch it right to the edge of the weeds and just let it fall and just watch my line. And I mean, Bob fished these for years, and I was like, yeah. Finally, he converted me because I saw, just the numbers of fish you can catch. I know guys who are jig fishermen who will just pitch, into the pockets in the weeds and just let them fall, and fish a spot, let it go to the bottom, lift once, lift twice, move it up, and move to the next spot. Yeah, guys are successful doing that. I've just had so much luck fishing the Senko's wacky style that I really like to do that a little bit more.
Same thing with, I was converted to the Senko's a long time ago, but I also was taught about throwing heavy jigs in those weeds in the summertime. And a couple of guys I know took me out and said, we got to do this. I'm like, throwing a jig in weeds is pain. When you start catching 4 and 5 pounders on a jig, and you're not fishing very deep, but you're putting it in there. And that's one thing that we all gather up here, is that a lot of times you just don't want to waste your time doing that, because you got to have confidence in it. So, I mean, try that kind of stuff and do it. Somebody else had a question. Yeah.
Hurry up, Phil Donahue.
Yep, I'm coming.
Is this a commercial?
I'd like to switch it up a little bit and ask Chris and Blaine a question about smallmouth. Smallmouth are not native to the Delaware watershed, and I'd ask you to give a comparison between the habitat and quality of fish between the Susquehanna and the Delaware.
The Susquehanna River is full of very large bass, especially now. About 2000, 2001, 2002, many of the anglers that were fishing there, like myself, on a regular basis, were noticing that the population of the bass were declining. Our 100 fish days turned into 60 fish days pretty quick over a 3-year period. And at first, we were really alarmed. And I know that there are a number of people who are still alarmed about it, but the forage in that river is unbelievable. I can just tell you this, I'm catching more 5-pound bass there than ever before. And that's pretty impressive for a river fish. We fish the Delaware and the Susquehanna quite a bit, and the difference in the fish almost looks like it's a completely different species. I've heard a lot of people tell me different things about why they believe that is. I think it has to do with the forage. The Susquehanna River is one they call, let's say it's a mile wide. I know it's not quite a mile wide, and a foot deep. Those are two exaggerations. But in the Delaware and the Susquehanna, the Delaware deep water could be 30 feet. You're not going to find many pools in the summertime on the Susquehanna deeper than 5 foot. So when you find a hole that's 5 foot deep, you are in, that's Mecca. You're going to find a lot of big fish there. And they feed primarily on, they do feed on minnows, but their primary forage is hellgrammites and crawfish, crayfish. They're everywhere. So I'm not so sure if the size is based on the forage or the flow. It's also very, I'd say, more stagnant. Delaware has a heavier flow. If you look at CFS, cubic feet per second, you're confused by that because you see a much larger flow, but the river is 3 or 4 times the size. So the water that I see, the current's heavier in the Delaware, in my opinion, than it is in the Susquehanna in the summer months for sure. So I think that, I'm not so sure the species is actually different. It could be. They certainly do look different. They're smaller heads and much larger bodies, where the Delaware have these huge heads and a very lean, built for speed type body.
Blaine, now I'm going to shoot to you about the Delaware River up north where you fished. Give a little area, because I don't know if people have fished that far up, and you want to throw in the back that you have to have a jet boat.
Yeah, what I see on the, and I fish both rivers. I spend most of my time on the Delaware. One thing we don't see on the Delaware like we do on the Susquehanna is the population of crayfish. You just don't see them. We'll flip rocks on the Susquehanna, and it's nothing to see 2 or 3 of them go scurrying out from under one small rock. Whereas on the Delaware, I'll have to lift 10 rocks to see 1 crayfish a lot of times, and that's a big difference. However, what I have found on the Delaware is they're more prone to want to eat bait fish, minnow-style baits. The Susquehanna in the springtime, it's kind of funny too. We did a spot on a TV show last year on the Susquehanna, where the fish were feeding on crawdads, but we were catching them on jerk baits. Now, that kind of throws match the hatch right out the window, I guess, you know, and we discussed that on the show. And the bottom line is, I think basically a jerkbait was more of a reaction style bait, whereas the smallmouth are eating crayfish. But if they're feeding and you get one to react to a jerkbait, and we had to sit there and hold the jerkbait in the current for 30 seconds without twitching it, it's just sitting in front of them for 30 seconds or a minute till they eat it. You know, so there's a lot of differences. I've seen fish on the Delaware River spit up anything from moles and rats and mice to I caught one in February a few years ago that had a walking stick sticking out of it, a 6-inch like praying mantis style walking stick. I mean, it's amazing. Baby birds, you know, you see, we don't see frogs. But another thing on the Delaware, what I've noticed, since the influx of the striped bass, we used to catch a lot of smallmouth, especially from June through September when the lampreys would come up and they would spawn. And they would be full of little baby eels. They'd just be loaded. And you'd see one 13 or 14-inch bass puke up little balls of these eels. There'd be 3 or 4 of them come out of one fish. And I was lucky last year if I saw 10 bass regurgitate eels. You just don't see it anymore. I don't know if it's because of the stripers or not. I'm going to assume that, but I don't have any data that would say that. But it makes sense to me. You know, the stripers love those eels. So, yeah, the forage base is so much different. Both rivers, the Delaware, you know, it's healthy. The Susquehanna, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumor. The bottom line is they're both under the gun, really, if you really want to get honest about it. We live in a populated area. We really live in a populated area. We live in a high-pressure fishing area, and these rivers really need our help. You know, it's that simple. They just really need our help. So whatever we can do, I think that's the best way I can kind of put it into description, is the forage is different. They're both rivers, and I'll teach my clients that. A river environment is forever changing. When you write a book on river smallmouth bass, there's going to be a lot of similarities, a lot of things that are going to be the same. The Susquehanna does not fish like most rivers I know because of the depth. It's just a shallower river. It's rocky, and it's loaded with forage. You know, the rivers I'm used to, like the Delaware, are deeper, and we have to do depth, you know, assessments a lot of times on our crankbaits and our jerkbaits and things like that. So there's a lot of different techniques.
Another difference too, I think, is on the Susquehanna, there's so much forage that your zone, everybody knows about a zone. When you cast to a spot, if you're not dead on that spot, the fish won't travel. When there's so much forage, they're not going to travel more than a few feet to eat your bait. They're not going to. They might look at it, but really, especially when there's a lot of pressure on the river, you need to hit those spots. On the Delaware, those fish are a little bit more active. You could be in a very fast flow in a riffle, and I'll see a fish come from 25, 30 feet away sometimes in that clear water to smack, you know, be swimming a jig or a spinnerbait or something like that. And I'll see the wake coming. They're coming across that water to hit it. They're all opportunistic, but in that Delaware, it seems that if it's moving in the water, they can see it, they feel it fast, and they'll go further. So I think that from some respects, there's a little difference in there as well.
All right, guys, we're running out of time here. I would take one more question.
How's crappie fishing?
Sit down. Speak loud.
Yeah, I know, you didn't want to hear that. How's the crappie fishing at Nakamixon? Calico bass.
Yeah, I used to call them calico bass when I was a kid too. I'll be honest with you, I haven't specifically targeted crappies since I probably was a kid. The best I know from catching crappies is what I see on the sporting goods store's wall. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not sure if any of the other guys has more of panfish knowledge of Nakamixon, but no one wants to jump in on that.
Well, I can jump in on that.
Go for it.
Years back, a guy from down south someplace moved up here, and I got to be friendly with them because one day I was hanging out fishing, obviously, and he had a cooler full of giant crappie. And I said, "Where'd you get them?" He says, "Nakamixon." I said, "Ain't no crappie in Nakamixon." He says, "Come, I'll show you." What he would do was he would take a long pole, okay, with minnows, and he would walk along the bank under the trees, and he would just do that little thing out there. And I said, "Yeah, well, come with me." I go, "Okay." Man, we tore him up. It's funny, you don't think of fishing like that, but that's a southern technique, and that's what he would do. He'd get on his knees, and he'd, just dabble that minnow out there, and boy, he was catching just amazing.
Most of the time when I'm fishing for bass, larger baits. I mean, I've caught a crappie on a buzzbait at Nakamixon, and I was, holy cow, that's a crappie on a buzzbait, and I wasn't expecting it. They're there, and I believe they're living in the same environments, but I'm just not targeting them. I think that if I was to use, a smaller crankbait, a smaller jig, a smaller spinnerbait, I'd probably start catching more. Or the other thing, whenever I'll take my kids out, I'll usually get some live bait or some minnows, and then we start catching perch. We'll catch bass. I've caught some crappies doing that. But as far as fishing artificials go, I'm usually targeting the largemouth or smallmouth.
I got one more thing here. Grab this one here. Someone had a question back here. Who was it? Yeah.
My question earlier, you said that you were using, I forget what it is, 15, 16 feet down. Are you doing that during the thermocline, or are you doing that before the thermocline sets up at 8 or 9 feet?
I'll tell you, I've spent a lot of time experimenting with my depth finder, identifying the thermocline. What I'm saying is that when I'm marking fish at a certain depth, that's the depth I'm going to fish. And though I'll see a lot of fish suspended out in the main lake at a certain depth, if I see fish suspended at 16 or 18 feet, I'm usually going to try to find some structure close by at 16 or 18 feet. I personally have had terrible luck catching fish suspended out in the middle of the lake. They're usually in a neutral mood. When they want to get more active, they'll move laterally up to the bank, and then if I target some form of structure that's near that depth, I usually have a lot more luck. So identifying the thermocline, I think it's more important to identify the level that the fish are at, and I think probably you'll find them to be one and the same.
All right, thank you very much. We are out of time.